All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are tackling a really complex and honestly sometimes pretty heartbreaking topic, the overlapping worlds of humans and black bears. When our habitats inevitably collide, how exactly do we manage those encounters? We're going to break down the specific real-world strategies wildlife managers are using out in the field, what the hard data actually tells us about whether those tactics work, and ultimately, what role you and I play in the survival of these incredible animals. Okay, let's dive into this with a specific case from the fall of 2015 that perfectly sets the stage for us. Picture this, a 200-pound, 5-year-old male black bear in Glacier National Park. On day 1, which was August 31st, this bear is spotted doing something completely natural, just munching on mountain ash berries. But the catch? He's doing it right next to the buildings of the Lake McDonald Lodge. So over the next 10 days, park rangers try to haze the bear away. They are repeatedly hitting it with rubber bullets and beanbag rounds. But here's the crazy part. Despite being shot with these super painful projectiles, the bear actually becomes increasingly comfortable around the lodge and all the people. It even started looking into the windows of the employee dorms. So by day 11, rangers had no choice but to capture the bear, tag it, and relocate it out to a remote area of the park. Now, to understand exactly why the rangers took those steps, we need to look at the language wildlife managers use. Because when you're in bear country, these two specific terms literally mean the difference between life and death for the animal. First, you have a habituated bear. That's a bear that has simply gotten used to the presence of people, buildings, or roads. They aren't necessarily friendly, right? But they don't run away in terror either. Crucially, though, a habituated bear is still eating natural food, like our glacier bear eating those ash berries. But then we have the danger zone, food conditioned. This is a bear that has actively sought out and obtained non-natural human foods. Maybe it destroyed property to get it or started acting aggressively. The second a bear crosses that line from habituated to food conditioned, it instantly becomes a massive public safety threat. So how do you stop a bear from crossing that line in the first place? Well, the tactic those glacier rangers were using with the rubber bullets is a formal management strategy called aversive conditioning, or AC. The whole goal here is to teach the animal to associate a negative physical or psychological stimulus with humans or human infrastructure. It's not just scaring a bear away one time, it's a dedicated, sustained program to create learned avoidance. But does it actually work? To figure that out, we're going to zoom out from our single bear in Glacier and look at an incredibly rigorous scientific study published in PLOS One. They tested aversive conditioning on radio-collared black bears in Whistler, British Columbia, which is a heavily populated resort town. In this study, researchers literally tracked these conflict bears for days, applying a negative stimulus every single time the bears tried to get near human areas or food sources during the day. And their toolkit was wild. They used an entire arsenal of non-lethal projectiles. We're talking rubber bullets and beanbags from shot gardens, paintballs, and yes, even marbles launched from slingshots if they were up close. But they also tested sound stimuli. So for some of these bears, researchers would blow a whistle right before firing and ring a bell when the bear retreated to cover, trying to build an auditory cue. And get this is a totally surprising finding. Introducing that sound stimulus, like blowing the whistle, actually decreased the likelihood of a bear fleeing by 45%. No way, right? You'd think the noise would scare them more, but it actually seemed to make the conditioning way less effective. So knowing all the sheer effort, the time, and these crazy diverse tactics that go into aversive conditioning, we have to ask the big question. When a ranger spends days tracking a bear, launching rubber bullets and paintballs at it, does it actually work? Does it change the animal's behavior and keep us safe? Well, the short answer is yes, conditionally. The researchers found that displacement distance, which is basically how far a bear will run away when a human approaches, shot up by a massive 69% for the bears in the aversive conditioning program. So they absolutely became way more wary of humans in the short term. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's happening. When you compare the unhazed control group to the actively hazed AC group, the difference is night and day. For overt reaction distance, like when a bear first notices you and freezes, and that displacement distance we just talked about, the hazed bears showed huge percentage increases. But look at the control group. The bears that weren't hazed actually saw a decrease in those distances, meaning if we do nothing, they're just getting more and more comfortable around us over time. So the physical conditioning definitely makes them run further away. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the nuance of when a bear actually decides to run. It's not just a blind panic every time. The data shows that the more aversive conditioning events a bear had in the past 30 days, the more likely it was to bolt the second researchers showed up. They learned the drill. In fact, their chance of fleeing went up 4.5% with every single past encounter. But, and this is a big but, that likelihood absolutely plummets the further away the bear is from natural cover. Think about it. If a bear is standing out in the open on a golf course, 50 meters from the woods, it's actually much less likely to run from the projectiles than if it's just a few feet from the safety of the trees. So the crucial point is this. While aversive conditioning successfully makes bears warier and makes them run further away when confronted, it fundamentally fails to change their overall habitat use. Let that sink in for a second. The GPS collar data from this Whistler study proved that shooting bears with rubber bullets did absolutely zero to reduce the amount of time they spent in human-dominated areas. None. They just learned to be sneakier or to run away a bit faster when someone with a gun showed up. It did not keep them out of our residential spaces. Which, unfortunately, brings our narrative full circle, right back to the tragic case of our Glacier National Park bear. Remember, they hazed him and they relocated him on day 11. Well, on day 17, he came back. He traveled all the way from the remote North Fork right back to the Lake McDonald area. And this time, he wasn't just eating mountain ash berries. He broke into a parked vehicle to get human food. And just like that, in a split second, his status changed. He wasn't just habitated anymore. He was officially food conditioned. Because he crossed that line and destroyed property to get non-natural food, he was deemed a severe threat to public safety. And the very next day, park managers tracked him down and he was lethally removed. Now, a super common and frankly completely understandable reaction to hearing a story like that is to ask, why did they have to kill him? Couldn't they just put him in a zoo or an animal rescue? The National Park Service is pretty blunt about this. Black bears are just not good candidates for captivity. You see, the black bear population is doing incredibly well across the U.S. Because they're so plentiful, there's no conservation need and, honestly, literally no physical space to take a 200-pound wild adult male with a history of property damage and stick him in a cage. So lethal removal sadly becomes the only real option once a bear becomes heavily food conditioned. But why on earth did this bear risk its life to break into a car? Well, we have to look at the biology. During the late summer and fall, bears enter this state called hyperphagia. It's essentially a period of absolute, non-stop, concentrated feeding. Their entire biological existence is just focused on packing on enough calories to survive winter hibernation. And in 2015, Glacier National Park had a huge shortage of natural berry crops. So the bear wasn't being malicious, it was starving. It was biologically driven by hyperphagia to find calories anywhere it could, and a car smelling like a walking buffet was just too easy a target. Let's move to and see how this builds to the ultimate conclusion here. If shooting them with rubber bullets doesn't keep them out of our spaces, and relocating them rarely works because they just walk right back, the responsibility shifts entirely onto us. The National Park Service puts it plainly. Thus, it is especially important that visitors keep campgrounds and developed areas clean and free of food and trash. We can't turn off a bear's biological drive to eat, but we have 100% control over the attractants we leave lying around. Really, protecting these animals means we have to be incredibly disciplined when we step into their living room. The rules are specific and they are non-negotiable if we want to save them. All food, cookware, and trash, lock it inside a hard-sided vehicle or a bear locker. Never, ever burn trash in a fire ring. Oh, and if you see a bear on the side of the road, keep driving. Don't stop and cause a bear jam. It just habituates the bear to cars and makes it way more likely they'll get run over. When you're out on the trail, hike in groups, make a lot of noise so you don't surprise them, and please, keep your bear spray instantly accessible. Don't leave it buried at the bottom of your backpack. Look, the science is clear. We can shoot them with all the rubber bullets we want, we can blast whistles, we can haul them miles and miles away, but a hungry bear is always going to follow its nose. The true aversive conditioning needs to happen to us. Wildlife managers are out there doing everything they can to keep these animals wild and alive. So the real question you have to ask yourself before you pack up your car for that next camping trip is, will we manage our own behavior to ensure their survival? Because at the end of the day, a fed bear is a dead bear, and their fate is entirely in our hands. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gives you a whole new perspective on wildlife management, and I'll catch you next time.